we'll have at least one or two left. Well, you've come this far by faith. You can't back down now. I think we will be done. I think after this, we'll probably have 3 more weeks. We'll be done. So we'll be done before Thanksgiving. What I'm hoping is that the last, and I know people go to other churches, but if you could put on your schedule to come the last Sunday, that's the Sunday before Thanksgiving here. First of all, we're going to have the Cravens. They sing all over the country and all over the world. We've had them every year. They're very, very good. One of the best bass singers you'll ever hear. And if that's not incentive enough, we're going to feed you a big meal right after that. And then there's a method of madness, because I'm hoping that you'll have it all learned, and we can stand up here and present it to the whole church, and just make them mad and jealous that they missed it. See, that's what we want to do. It's a very Christian-like attitude that I have.
In the bulletin that came out, it has us meeting the day before Thanksgiving.
Well, we're not going to.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, I should have, yeah. We will not meet. Well, and one of the reasons is that Monday, we had a community, well, some of you went last year, to the community Thanksgiving, because you came to that, I think. So yeah, that's another thing. Sunday, the last Sunday, mornings when we're having we're going to have a big November. Not this Sunday, but next Sunday, we're having the Homeland Singers. We're just going to be singing all November. That's what it is. But the last Sunday, we'll have the Cravens here. And like I said, we'll have a big meal. We call it the Friendsgiving meal. And I've been to a lot of churches, and churches have a lot of food, but nothing compared to Antioch. I've never seen so much food in my life, so they feed you well here. And then, if you're interested, we do have a Thanksgiving Day. It's a night service. It's a community Thanksgiving Day service that Monday night from 7. A lot of it, for those of you who are Trinity, pretty much kind of the same thing that I did Trinity for years. When we did it on Thanksgiving morning, I got to find a church that has Thanksgiving morning, because my Thanksgiving isn't complete unless I go to church on Thanksgiving morning. But maybe I'll come here and have my own service, you know. But anyway, I do want to get started. Let's all stand. By the way, if you do a good job, I got a little gift for all of you. But if you don't get it. Okay? We started Joshua. I think last week we had a little bit of problems with Joshua, so we're going to start Joshua, and we're going to try to go all the way up to what we learned last week. How many practice this every day this week? One. 5 times a day, 5 times in the week? 5, 3, 4, okay, all right. Here we go. We're going to start with, what did I say, Joshua. So, Joshua. Lord, is that Lord?
Judges, 400 years, Deborah, Gideon,
Ruth and Samuel. United Kingdom. Okay.
Saul, no more, David, and more,
Oh, did we go there? Yeah, okay. Divided kingdom. 400 years. Okay, here we go. I love this part. So, Israel, Judah, 1920-08. Prophets speak Sheba or Sheba. Edom, Obadiah, Assyria, Jonah, later Nahum. See, we do that. Now, when we get into here with these prophets, It's a little bit more, but I think I think it's important because this really, if you know, this is just a jumping off course. As you go to study the Old Testament on your own, I think it's important to understand the contents of these prophets and when and to who they prophesied. So we start first with the Gentile nations, okay? Not Israel, not Judah, but the Gentile nations, and that's, now why did I make a mountain? Well, you didn't know it was a mountain. Why did I pretend to make a mountain? Edom is a mountainous country. So Edom, and we put an Obadiah there. Then I put, remember your imaginary map. I hope you studied that. So it's, so Syria's over there. Assyria, okay? And who's the first prophet? Jonah. Nahum helps us to remember later Nahum. Now I say later Nahum because they weren't, they are separated by a distance, but those two are to Syria. So we say Syria, Jonah, Nahum, later Nahum. Now we're going to talk to the northern kingdom, which is Israel, the north, and we're going to do what? Okay, we have the two E's, Elijah and Elisha. Now, they don't have a book named after them, but they're very, very important characters in the Old Testament. We'll talk about that. Elijah and Elisha, but the people said, ha, they laughed at them, and that helps us to remember Hosea and Amos. So really we'll learn nice one, and we're not done yet. And then we have the southern kingdom, and how do you remember that? Jim, Joel, Isaiah, Micah. Now is that what we ended? Yeah. Okay, all right, that's good. All right, let's do that again now. I won't interrupt, but I won't even help you either. So we're going to start, let's start with, what do we say? Joshua.
Jordan. Jericho. Divide and conquer, south and north. Divide and settle, 12 tribes. Judges, 40 years.
Samson, okay. Except Ruth and Samuel. I'm just keeping them together here. Except Ruth and Samuel. Okay. United Kingdom.
Saul, Noah, David,
400 years.
North, South, Israel, Judah, 1920, 08.
Shit out. Edom.
Syria, Judah,
Nahum. Later Nahum. Okay. Well, we're going to say Northern Kingdom. Northern Kingdom. Okay, good. You can sit down. Now, that doesn't mean, now I'm assuming that the walkthrough before we get to Joshua is numbers like that. I mean, you're saying your sleep, you're just, just repeating, it comes automatically. So is that right? Yeah, I think it is true for some of you. I don't know about all of you. Okay, when I say offerings and feasts, you're going to tell me what? Well, Leviticus. Good. Saul. 1 Samuel. Very good. Editorial on David. Good. Solomon split. Oops. Well, you were half right. Just divided by 2. First Kings. Okay. First Kings. Okay. David. 2 Samuel. I think so. When he killed the guy, Okay. Wanderers. Conquerors. Love story. Cycles. Genesis. Deuteronomy. Good. All right, that's pretty good. You got that down pat. I do want to review a little bit If you have your books, you can follow along. I'm going to review pages 15 through 17. I want to talk about the prophets. I do have them up here. If you don't have them, you can look at it. I'm going to do this very quickly. I do try to review every week, and that's part of it. The prophetic books are very important, although I think in many Christian circles and churches, they're almost ignored, but they contain 1/4 of the scripture and are crucial to both a historical and theological point of view. So history is important, and they have a lot of theology. Again, remember how our Old Testament, which is, we should call it Tanakh. When I pause like that, I'm not having a stroke. I'm waiting for you to finish. I keep thinking one of these days I'm going to be teaching and have a stroke, and no one's going to pay attention. I'll be up there, I can't talk anymore, and never mind, he's fine. You just wait for us to answer. That's what I know. So we have the Torah. That's the first 5 books. The second division of the Hebrew Bible is known as the prophets. We talked about the Tanakh as a combination of 3 Hebrew words in the Hebrew Bible. We don't divide them up like they do, but the Torah, that's the Tanakh aspect of it. Navim, that's the prophets, and the prophets consist of the former prophets. Now these are actually historical books. That's Joshua, Judges, Samuel, and Kings, not Chronicles, but Samuel and Kings. And they provide the historical background, and they also have what we call the former judges, like Samuel, and all that's in there. And then it also has the later prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and then what we call the book of prophets, the 12 minor prophets. Lamentations and Daniel are in, along with the rest of the Old Testament books, in what is called the Chagith, which means writings. This is how the Hebrew Bible has divided it. So if you have a Hebrew Bible, the Bible that the Hebrews used, they have the same material, they just don't have the same order that we have. Okay? So the major prophets are Isaiah and Jeremiah. Now, Lamentation is not a prophet, but it's written by Jeremiah, so we group them together. Although, as I said, it's not. Lamentation is not listed with the prophets. And you have Ezekiel, Daniel. You have the minor prophets. I'm getting a ringing or something here. Let me turn me down a little bit. You have, and I think these are the most, or the least familiar of the books in the entire Bible. These 12 minor prophets, and that's a shame because they're very, very good. You have Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah. You what? I'm on page 15. Oh, is it? Oh, is it 12? All right, I'm sorry. I've got an extended version. Okay. Huh? You have the abridged version. Can't give you everything. You have Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Rebecca, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Now again, let's review the key words for these books. If you remember, and I think that's the next slide, we have Obadiah. Now, how are we going to remember Obadiah? Well, we have a bed with a big O. Obadiah. But what's the key word? Brother's keeper. Why? Well, this was the descendants from who? Who are the Esau. So Edom, and the problem was that Edom rushed to help Israel's enemies instead of being their friend. And so Obadiah's prophecy is against them. It's declared that he is declaring doom because of their arrogance and their cruelty to Judah. It's a very short book, the shortest book in the Old Testament. I still didn't. I meant to look up if it's shorter than it says 3 John. But anyway, then we have Jonah, and of course the key word there is fish. I think. Well, I don't know if we talked about it. Well, we did, yeah. Jonah prophecies are to Assyria. Remember, to Nineveh. Now this happened before the exile of the southern kingdom. We all know the story of Jonah and the whale and the great fish. Then we had Nahum and the it's flood or walls, yeah. And they had This is a more different picture than the one I learned. I think the one I had is better. They had like Nehi, Nahum, for walls of flood. And this is a prophecy to Assyria. Remember, Jonah and Nahum, later Nahum, was a prophecy to Assyria. And it describes a description of certain death for Nineveh, the capital of Assyria. If you remember Jonah, they weren't destroyed. They repented. Jonah got mad that they repented. That's kind of interesting. It's kind of like, we were preaching judgment on the world, and then they come and get saved and get mad that, we can't, throw judgment on them. But he got over it, after a little discipline. But for Nahum, the Tigris River will flood, wash away part of the city's walls. The Babylonian army will then sweep through the city, and it did come to pass. Now again, we talked about the northern kingdom prophets, Elijah and Elisha, and Hosea and Amos. Hosea, if you remember, was prophesied to the northern kingdom of Israel, as we said, along with Elijah and Elisha. Hosea, it's interesting that these prophets, and Hosea isn't the only one, as we'll see later in the course, they use symbolism to show, and even drama, and really drama. You had basically Hosea is told to marry a harlot. And so his marriage is going to parallel the terrible spiritual condition of the northern kingdom, Israel itself. He instructs God to marry the harlot Gomer, but then when Gomer went into the Marines, I don't know what happened, but that's something. I'm getting confused here, but anyway. Hosea finds mirrored in his own domestic life an accurate portrayal of the unfaithfulness of God's people, because his wife, of course, was unfaithful. Then we have Amos. That's the harlot. So that's your picture. We know it's Hosea because she is, she's wrapped in a hose, but she's there by the red light district, I guess. So the key word there is harlot. Then we have Amos. That's Amos, and he's holding a plumb line. Again, there's a lot of this symbolism and prophecy of these Old Testament prophecies. The prophet holds up the carpenter's plumb line to measure the nation against God's perfect standard, and they, of course, are found wanting. Northern kingdom, pretty bad. Then you have the southern kingdom. Now, the southern kingdom, again, is the prophets before the exile, and it's before even Assyria captured the northern kingdom. If you'll notice, when we're going through these books, we're not going in the order that they're in the Bible. We're going in the order, more of a chronological order as the events happen. Okay? And so I think that helps us to understand a little bit better. And then we have the picture there is the Jello. Well, that's Joel, but the key word is, without a T, locust. Joel uses the calamity of locusts in the nation of Judah to call a warning. In fact, I'm going to be preaching on Joel this Sunday. That's a little commercial. I'm going to be preaching on the topic, Tale of Two Trumpets, or Deadly Election. The Tale of Two Trumpets, in the second chapter, the first chapter, we have the plague of the locusts. That's the first warning. But then there's this first trumpet to call the people to warn them that the judgment that is coming. We sing that song, they run up the city, they run up the wall. You know that song? Yeah. Well, we sang it here, yeah. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about that. All right. Did I talk about Isaiah? I think I did. This is an I saying ah. That's wrong in your book. It says I say so. I must have been thinking of that when I wrote it. It should say I say There's an I saying that's Isaiah. But notice there's two people. The one is groaning and the one is glory. And I think Isaiah is very, very important. Isaiah is the Bible in miniature. It really is. And I realize that these chapters and verses are arbitrary. They weren't written till much later, but it's kind of interesting that's divided into two parts. In fact, critical liberals say that Isaiah didn't write both parts. There's clearly a distinction in the two parts of Isaiah. And strangely enough, the first 39 chapters, chapters 1 through 39, is a message of condemnation, which parallels the Old Testament. So that's why we can call this you might say a Bible in miniature. The part 2, 27 chapters, 40 through 66, is a message of consolation of glory. The Messiah will come. And so you have the two words for that, groan and glory. Then we have Micah, and the picture there's a mic. Micah is speaking, Micah, and it's obviously looked like a judge, so we have this day in court. Again, the prophet, a lot of these prophecies, again, are on judgment through different symbolism and different ways of doing it. In this case, the Judah has her day in court with Micah the prosecutor, and the verdict is guilty. So all the prophets studied so far prophesied before the exile of the southern kingdom and before the taking away of the northern kingdom. Edom, Obadiah, Assyria, Jonah, later Nahum, northern kingdom, Elijah, Elisha, Hosea, Amos, southern kingdom, Jim, Joel, Isaiah, Micah. Now remember, it's Joel, it's not Jeremiah. So I think that pretty much is a review. So I want to get into, I don't know what page you're on, but it begins with 2 Kings 14. Man, I'm on 18 already. 2 Kings. So we haven't talked about this one yet. But how do we know this is 2 Kings? Because we have two kings there. That's the clue. Now, where are they? They're on an island. I don't think it's Gilligan's Island, but the key word there is exile. Exile. So 2 Kings. So remember, 1 Kings, that was the solemn split, but now we have 2 Kings, and it basically recounts the captivities of both Israel and Judah. The glory that was once the united kingdom has gone. Both Israel and Judah pursue a collision course for them to be exiled. Actually, you might say that Israel was actually dispersed and never really reunited. But in spite of the efforts of Elijah and Elisha, and again, these two characters are really, really interesting. I remember we used to have on Saturday night, we had a service. It was called the Young People's Endeavor Service. It wasn't really a youth service, but it was geared for maybe the youth more because we did different things. I remember we had a debate. My mother was in charge of these. She was very creative. And they had a debate which was resolved that Elijah was the greater prophet than Elisha. Well, what it did was had everybody studying the lives of these two, making their case. But it's very, very interesting. Elijah and Elisha. If you remember, Elisha, I'm tempted to really go into this because it's kind of neat. If you remember, Elisha's wish before Elijah left was that he wanted a double portion of God's blessing upon his life. And Elisha actually did twice as many miracles as Elijah did. So I don't want to get into all of that because this is just a brief survey of it. But in spite of their efforts, the division ultimately ends in destruction. Corrupt Israel is captured and dispersed by the Assyrians in 722 BC. Now, I'm not saying you have to remember dates, but it does give you a little hook, if you will, to describe it. If you remember, I gave you one other date, if you remember. You remember that? 1000, what was that? That was David. So 1000 BC, we had David, but now 300 years later, we have the Assyrians destroying Israel. A century later, a little bit more than a century, Judah is taken to exile in Babylonia. That was 586 BC. So the divided kingdom Solomon and then splits of 1 Kings becomes the dissolved kingdoms in 2 Kings. Without interruption, 2 Kings continues the narrative of 1 Kings. But I didn't study it right after that because I wanted to talk about the prophets that prophesied before that took place. So let's talk about 2 Kings briefly. Again, we divide this up. Chapters 1 through 17, the divided kingdom. These chapters really record the story of Israel's corruption in a relentless succession of bad kings, from Ahaziah to Hoshea. The northern kingdom of Israel is terrible. It's bleak, dark time. Its only ministries, the only salvation, you might say, was the godly prophets of Elijah and Elisha, that there was any hope. And at the end of Elijah's miracles ministry, Elisha is installed. In Israel, this is kind of interesting. There were 9 dynasties. Now, you know what I'm talking about. There was 19 kings, but 9 dynasties. And all but one was created by murdering the previous king. I mean, this was good. This was really, it was really corrupt. So Israel history comes to an end by the invasion of Syria, who scatters the people and occupies the land. Israel's northern kingdom comes to an end. Judah is also mentioned. And during these first 17 chapters, and this is where you have to be careful because it's a bit confusing. Because up until the exile of the northern kingdoms, 2 Kings is talking about kings in both the northern kingdom and southern kingdom. So you have to study this a little bit really carefully, because then say this thing of the northern kingdom, this one's the southern kingdom. So it's not a light study. We did it at Trinity. We did the book of Kings, 1 and 2 Kings. There's a lot of bloodshed. There's a lot of wars. Well, I think we did it in the afternoon. Yeah, I think that's the reason. I think we did it in the afternoon. If we don't think we did it on Wednesday night. Then chapters 18 through 25 talks about the surviving kingdom after the northern kingdom does disappear, and its remaining kingdoms of Judah. Now, what's interesting, in Judah there's only one dynasty, so that's a little better. 8 of its 20 kings do right. At least they had some good ones.
Sir?
Yeah. Do what?
Explain a dynasty. Is a dynasty?
Well, a dynasty is like a family.
Okay.
So and then my son would be the king. But so it stayed in the bloodline. In the southern kingdom, it stayed in the bloodline. One dynasty. As I said, in the northern kingdom, another family kind of kills them. So that's why they had so many dynasties. And then they had a TV show about it. But anyway. 6 years after the overthrow of Israel's capital of Samaria, that's after, the northern kingdom's gone now, we have Hezekiah becomes king of Judah. And Hezekiah is an interesting character. He's a very good king. And thus God spares Jerusalem from Assyria. In other words, I mean, this is happening at the same time. I mean, they see it coming. The Assyria's coming, taking the northern kingdom, people in the southern kingdom, oh no, this is not good. But fortunately, they have the good fortune or the good sense to have a good king. And so destruction doesn't come to Judah. But his son, Manasseh, is so bad. I mean, he's worse than Hezekiah was good. He was terrible. And he also had a long reign that leads to the downfall of Judah. There was later kings like Josiah, another very good king, but it doesn't stem the tide of evil. So you have Jezebel in the northern kingdom causing all kinds of problems just before their destruction. You have this Manasseh, a very, very bad king that will eventually lead to the downfall of Judah. During Josiah, you might have heard Josiah's reform. That basically during the king. And I know I'm going fast through this because, again, this is a quick survey, but I just wanted you to be aware of it. And as you study, and I know you may not go back and study all these books, obviously, right away, but at least you'll have a basic background on it. Josiah reform was when they discovered the book of Deuteronomy. They discovered it hidden in one of the walls of the temple, or of the, and he brings the people together. They have basically what is known as the Josiah reform. But Judas, the southern kingdom, finally comes with the Babylonian exile. There's actually three, and what we mean by that is they're deporting the people now from Jerusalem to Babylon, and there's actually three of these. The third occurs in 586 BC, and I gave you that date earlier, because that's when Nebuchadnezzar destroys Jerusalem and the temple. Very, very sad day. But the book ends with a hope as God preserves a remnant for himself. Now we come to 2 Chronicles. So I didn't talk about 2 Chronicles after I talked about 1 Chronicles, because while 1 Chronicles was what? On David, this is an editorial of Judah. So again, we have 2 Chronicles. You know, he's holding up 2 newspapers with the word Judah. So this is an editorial on Judah. This is a priestly editorial. If you remember, we said the book of Chronicles is describing the history, but from a priestly perspective. So basically, it's an editorial. It spans Judah's history from its highest peak to its lowest ebb, from Solomon's reign to the Babylonian exile. Why didn't it cover David? No. Why doesn't 2 Chronicles cover David? Because it's in 1 Chronicles. Okay, that's fine. I mean, it's 1 Chronicles, that we covered David, the editorial on David, you might say a whole book on David. But so now he covers the rest of the kings. From Solomon's reign, that's the first 9 chapters. Golden age, peace, prosperity, temple worship. In fact, 6 of these 9 chapters deal with the building of the temple. Glorious temple that hasn't been seen since. Hasn't been reproduced since. And then 10 through 36 talks about Judah's kings. Each king is shown and editorialized, you might say, with respect to the temple, the center of worship, and the spiritual strength. So basically, it's a minister giving a report card, you might say. 20 kings in the southern kingdom, 8 of which were good, 19 kings in the northern kingdom, 0 of which were good. When Jews are captive in Babylon, now this is interesting, Cyrus the Persian overthrows Babylon. So this is kind of interesting. In 539 BC, and he issues his decree to allow the Jews to return in 538 BC. Now, this is kind of an irony of history, that what would you say the biggest enemy of Israel is today? What country? Iran. Well, what is Iran? That's Persia. And it's ironic that Persia was such a friend to the Jews at this time, and today is their biggest enemy. They need to read their Bible and get that right. So now I want to talk about the prophets during this time, after the fall of Israel, but before the exile of the southern kingdom. And the first one we're going to study is Jeremiah. And did we didn't have the picture up there? Okay, maybe it's after that. Oh, there it is. Jeremiah. Yeah, okay. Now, how do I know this is Jeremiah? Well, but what is he holding up there? It's a rotten sash. Now, again, remember I said how these prophets have descriptive. In fact, you had one of the prophets told basically, go prophesy naked. It's really dramatizing the sin of the people. And so what happened, God graphically pictures the moral rottenness of this nation when he had Jeremiah bury a sash in the mud next to the Euphrates River and later dig it up. Well, you can imagine that was pretty rotten. So this is an autobiography of one of Judah's greatest prophets, who challenges his nation's greatest errors. It's ruining, it's disgusting, just like the nation. 40 years of faithful dealing, Jeremiah witnesses the fulfillment of many of his prophecies, unfortunately for him, concluding with God's final judgment on Judah for downfall and exile. Jeremiah is also known as the what? Weeping prophet. And so that's how we're gonna, when we get to the walkthrough, which we're gonna extend. Don't worry, we're gonna extend your walkthrough tonight. You're not gonna get off that easy. I know I'm talking a lot. Right now, this is a lot of information, and also we're getting the key words for these books. And then we have Lamentations. That's a lamb. And again, what's the key word there? Tears. So Lamentation is not a prophet. It's a book written by Jeremiah. Jeremiah is the weeping prophet. But of course, the key word there is rotten sash, but Lamentations is tears. The book it's not a very big book, but it consists of 5 lament poems. It's basically a funeral dirge, is what it is. You know, I mean, it's not exactly happy, lively, joyful reading. It's Judah's funeral dirge for the fallen city of Jerusalem. Then we have the next prophet called Zephaniah. So that's a Z with the fan, Zephaniah. Okay, can we get that from that? Zephaniah. The key word there is, you see, the sun represents a day. This is the day of the Lord. So Zephaniah is possessed with this one passion, motivated by one concern: the impending day of the Lord, the final judgment of God on earth, and the eventual time of blessing and peace on earth. I mean, you know, a lot of times when we study, prophecy, and we study Revelation. You know, that's the big prophetic book. And sometimes we'll throw in Daniel. Daniel is, and I'm going to get to Daniel in a minute, but I'm going to say it now. Daniel really is the revelation of the Old Testament. But he's not the only one. There's lots of prophecies that are basically in Revelation that is in the Old Testament as well. It's not just, the Old Testament doesn't just tell the story of Christ's first coming, it's second coming as well. Now the problem with these prophets of the Old Testament is it was kind of, they were looking at both the first and second coming, but it was kind of like if you're driving in the country and you're looking at mountains in the distance, and then there's this first mountain, there's another mountain in the back of it, but you can't really tell the distance between the two. They understood that there was, in essence, two events, but sometimes, they could be interpreted, well, if they're coming, these events going to happen now? So really, that's of course cleared up in the New Testament, but I really encourage people. I think this is a good study. We might do a walk through the New Testament sometime, not this year, but I might do that as well. But this is, I really think this walk through the Old Testament is really neat. It's really, can you tell I'm excited about it? And you're all excited about it too, because you study every day, that's right? Okay, good. Okay, then we have Habakkuk. Okay, now how do we know Habakkuk? Well, there's a guy with a backpack that says backpack. Habakkuk. And where is he? Where is he? He's on a tower, but what kind of tower? A watchtower. You see the watch? This is kind of important, and that's the key word. And he's there, this is contemplation. And he asks the questions that we ask. Why is just God silent? You have to understand that these prophets of the Old Testament grapple with some of the same things we do. Why are the cries of the faithful seemingly go unheard? So Habakkuk sits in his watchtower awaiting God's answer. But the answer is, in time, the wicked will be dealt with. All right. Questions? All right, we're going to add to our walkthrough. But before we do that, we're going to stand and do the entire walkthrough up to this point without my help. Right? I mean, you gotta get up there, you gotta get some exercise here. We gotta burn these calories, we gotta do this. Okay. All right, well, we're gonna start with
Creation, all, blood, nations, battle, 4,000 years, murder, law, salt, Sarah, Abraham, Lot, Sarah, Isaac, Esau, Jacob, Jerusalem, Egypt, Jews, Egypt, 400 years bondage. Moses led my people go. No, 10 plagues. Passover, Red Sea, Mount Sinai, laws, tabernacle, priests, offerings and feasts, counting the faces, and initial faces, 12 spies, 195. Moses, second law, dies. Joshua, Jordan, Jericho,
Mount South North, divide, settle, 12 tribes.
400 years.
We got the right, the lies, except Ruth and Samuel.
United Kingdom, 120 years. Saul, no heart, David, old heart, Solomon, half heart.
400 years.
Israel, Judah, 1920, 08. Prophets succeeding, Jacob, Shechab.
This word is a little tricky. Edom, Obadiah,
Assyria, Judah, now later name, Northern Kingdom, Micah, Hosea, Amos, Southern Kingdom, Jim, Joel, Isaiah, Micah, Northern.
Oh, did we stop there? Okay, so now we're ready for the new stuff. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, well, that's the new stuff. You can be seated, but I want you to get to that point. Now, again, obviously we go through the beginning, we know this pretty well, but really hit, your homework is really to hit this hard up to this point and also learn the new, which we're going to do tonight. Now, let's talk about this. Remember, we said that what we learned last week was the prophets in the north and south before the north was destroyed. But now we talked about the southern, Jim, Joel, Isaiah, Micah. But now what happens? Assyria, Israel, see, think of your map. Israel, northern kingdom, Israel, scattered. And now what happens? We're going to talk about the prophets that in the southern kingdom that prophesied after that exile, but before, after the northern kingdom was scattered, but before their exile. Who were they? They were Jeremiah, and we're going to show tears, the weeping prophet. Jeremiah, Lamentations, because he did both of them. Jeremiah, Lamentations. Now, we want to get rid of those tears. So how are we going to do it? We're going to fan to dry those tears. And that's going to help us to remember Zephaniah. So Jeremiah, Lamentations, We want to dry the tears. Zephaniah, and we want to pat him on the back. Habakkuk. So you got that? Jeremiah, Lamentations, Zephaniah, Habakkuk. That's how we're going to remember the Habakkuk. Yeah, Habakkuk. Now that's how we're going to remember what? The prophets to the southern kingdom after the fall of the north, but before their exile. Okay? Babylon, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Zephaniah, Habakkuk. But despite their crying, Babylonia is going to take them into exile. So Babylonia, Judah, exile, 70 years, and then we're going to remember Ed, Ezekiel, Daniel. So we remember Jim, and then Ed, okay? Ezekiel, Daniel. Okay. Is that all I meant? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's all the new part I'm going to give you tonight. If you promise, yeah.
Could you repeat the first line of Syria and Israel scattered?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's pointing. We're going to point to Assyria, then Israel scattered. So remember, keep that. Maybe I need to, next week I'll bring that map back up again, just to see it. But if you remember, this is Israel. Now Assyria's up there, you know. And so we're going to point to Assyria, and then Israel. That's the northern. So we won't go too far. Northern scattered, and then Jeremiah, Lamentations, Zephaniah, Habakkuk, and then we'll point to Babylon. And now we go down to Judah, exiled, 70 years, and then we just think of the word dead. Or if you want to point to him and make it, well, we point to Jim. They might get a complex. Jim, go out there like it. Hey, Ezekiel, Daniel. I think that's the last two. That's the only two people's names that we help us to do that. So that's important. So now we've got them in exile. So I want to talk about. Let's see, what time is it? Okay, I got a little bit of time here. So let's talk a little bit about that. Well, let's talk. I think we talked about the prophets up to that point. Now let's talk about the prophets during the exile of Judah, because we did do that in the Ezekiel, Daniel, Ezekiel. Let's see. That's the Ezekiel. The key word there is dry bones. You know the scene of the dry bones. This is kind of interesting. He has this vision, the dry bones that have been scattered in the valley, symbolizing the spiritually dead and the scattered nation of Israel. And he says, "Oh God, will these bones live again?" Chapters 1 through 3 is the commission of Ezekiel as a prophet. Chapters 4 through 24 is the judgment on the Judah. Chapters 25 through 32 is the judgment on the Gentiles, but chapters 33 through 48 is the restoration of Israel. And so then we have Daniel. That's Ezekiel. Ezekiel, dry bones. Okay? Dry bones. And then we have Daniel, of course. That's a pretty easy one to remember. There's Daniel lying then, and he has dreams. Now, Daniel, really, as I said, this is the revelation of the Old Testament. And in fact, even when you study, if you study prophecy, when you study Revelation, most of them will study Daniel side by side, particularly the 9th chapter of Daniel. And we'll get to that in just a minute. Chapter 1 is the personal history of Daniel. Chapters 2 through 7 is the prophetic plan for the Gentiles. And chapters 8 through 12 is the prophetic plan for Israel. So it's really a prophetic book. Okay, that's all I'm going to do tonight. So I want you to split up in your little groups, find a group together, and go through I mean, go through as much as you want to, but try to go through the new ones that you learned tonight. It wasn't that many. And then review probably from the prophets. Prophets speak, shape up or ship out, Edom, Obadiah, review that as well. So I'll give you maybe about 5 minutes to do that. And then we'll come back and we'll have fun. We'll just show off. But you guys have been good. Well, I don't want to do that yet. Remind me to give you your little present at the end. Well, anywhere, I mean, if you want to, maybe start with what you learned tonight. As you go over that, try to get a really good. And then whatever you decide you need to work on. You don't have a partner. How you doing? You doing good? Well, good. You have to say that. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was tough. I know. But that's okay. Well, good. Oh, you're doing good. Yeah, you're good. Good. Well, I'm glad you came. And I told people they don't have to come and memorize all the motions and everything. There's no fun of it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. Good. I felt bad for you being all by yourself. Well, here's a buddy for you. So how are we doing? Got it all done? Oh, the rotten sash? Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that in these, like I said, symbolism. There's a lot given. I want you to do this. You want me to carry my sash? Because it's going to be an object lesson. You know, the Old Testament is full of object lessons. And there's all kinds of, you know. Yeah. Do what? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah. Took a while. And a strong nation. I mean, no, they're not, I mean, you know. Yeah. Yeah. I tell you, God's hand is on Israelites. Well, I preached a sermon actually Sunday about the sun never sets, and I talked about the English Empire, the greatest empire the world had ever seen. Because they had good leaders. They had Israeli, they were a Jew, but a Christian Jew. And they boasted the sun never sets on the English Empire. It was all around the world. But when they started to turn their back against Israel, the sun sets every day now on the English nation. That's about all you can say. They've got a few, and I know the Commonwealth, but that's not really, I mean, that's just, hey, it would be nice to you to see them. But I mean, even if you call that, I mean, they turned their back against Israel. Well, oh, yeah, well, okay, okay, how did we do? We got it? You're laughing, I don't know. I think I tell you, other than these prophets, they do this in one day. When I took this, I did it in one day. They start in the morning. And
Did you also do these prophets?
well, I didn't do the prophets. I did add that because I thought that was see that kind of made me mad because I think people ignore the prophets. You know, they did basically what they did was prophets speak, shape up, and ship out. Then the next thing they said, Assyria, Israel scattered, and then Babylonia, Judah exile, and then Judah returned. But they didn't include all these prophets, which I think, you know, I mean, if you're going to study the Old Testament, you got to study prophets, as I said. All right, I'm going to have to make more because I don't think I made enough of these. But who did their homework this past week? Did you do your homework pretty good? All right, well, you get a little gift. Did you do your homework? Did you mind sharing? Okay. Did you do your homework? Did you do your homework? Okay. Oh, that's all right. Well, I'll get you on Sunday. Okay. I don't know. Did you guys do your homework? Okay. All right. Yeah. You can share, right? Okay. Then, do what? Okay, well, here's the picture, and you can share with, yeah, I'm gonna give it to her, and you guys, now, those will be in the order that they are in the Bible. I think you go across, yeah. Although it's, you know, that's the order that is in the Bible. I was thinking if I'd have done it again, and maybe for those who didn't get one, maybe when I print up the next one, I might do it in the order that we studied it. That might be easier. But there you have. None of you wanted to buy the cards. I hope I'm not violating any copyright rules by doing that. But there you have you have your list of the books and the key words there. All right, that's it. Except we're going to stand and do the whole thing one more time without me. I mean, I'll get you started. In case you don't remember creation, I'll get you started with that. How's that? You ready? Creation, all, flood, nations, battle, Israel, All right, I think we're not necessarily, let's start with Joseph, Egypt, Jews, 400 years.
Second law dies.
South, north, divide and settle, 12 tribes.
Solomon half heart. Divided 400 years. North, south, Israel, Judah, 1920-08. Prophecy, Shelah, Shelah. Hosea, Amos,
Isaiah, Micah. Okay. Well, Jeremiah, so Jeremiah, this is what we learned tonight. Jeremiah, Lamentations, Zephaniah, Habakkuk, Judah, exile, 70 years, and Ezekiel, Daniel. I think for some reason it seemed like Joshua, when you get to there, it gets a little, so really, I mean, I can only do so much. If you study this every day, and I mean, really, I'm not talking about studying 2 hours or even an hour or even 30 minutes. Study it for 10 minutes. Go through it. Study 10 minutes every day. It'll be part of it. I still do it. I want to say that I did it every day. There might have been a day or two that I skipped, but even on my vacation, I went to Gettysburg. I'm walking in the National Cemetery there. Creation, fall. Not loud. I think I walk in my neighborhood and I'm kind of saying it not out loud. I'm going through the motions. I thought, what are my neighbors thinking? Crazy. Oh, they do it, yeah. Okay. Okay, good. All right. Next week, we will expand on it. I think next week there's a lot of material, but there's only really one more extension to the walkthrough. So there'll be a lot of reviewing and everything. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time of fellowship. We thank you for studying your word, Lord. We ask that you'll enlighten our minds and our hearts to always be mindful of you. We pray in Jesus' name.